Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of CSS Bytes. Today I'm going to be exploring a CSS property called the box sizing. It's one of those properties that will ease the process of calculating height and width of an element. Let's get started. So basically, there are two types of box sizing properties available. One is the content box, the other is the border box. The content box is going to be the property that's going to be applied by default if you don't specify a box sizing. Alright, now let's consider an example. Let's consider we have a div with a width of 220 pixels, height of 70, margin, padding, and border 5 pixels each. What would be the total width that this element would occupy? You would think it's 220, right, since we specified, but no, it's gonna occupy a total of 240 pixels because it's gonna add 10 pixels for the padding and 10 pixels for the border. So this is the box model for this corresponding div. So the width of 220 pixels that we specified is just for the content, and the same for the height as well. The height that we specified as 70 is just for this content. It's gonna add 10 more pixels for padding and border for both width and the height. Now let's consider the case of border box. The same properties, but the border box will make sure the total width of the div is gonna be 220 pixels. The padding and the border is added to the 220 pixels. So nothing extra is actually added. So what decreases? The border box decreases the size of the content. So even though we specified 220, it makes sure that the content, padding, and border is going to be 220. So it's actually subtracting from the middle content. All right, now let's look at an example. I've just set up a CS simple example here. So we have two divs, the top div and the bottom div, for lack of creativity. So this is the CSS properties of the top div and this is the CSS properties of the bottom div. So if I don't specify a box sizing, it's gonna be a content box. Okay, now let's try adding some properties here. Let's give it a width of 220 pixels and a height of 70 pixels. Okay, so now let's add a padding of 5 pixels, a border of 5 pixels solid green, right, and then a margin of 5 pixels. Okay, now let's apply the same properties to a div with box sizing border box, right? All right, we can clearly see that the bottom div is actually shorter. I mean, the width is smaller than the top div. That's because the total width that the bottom div is occupying is 220, whereas the total width the top div is occupying is 240. Let's check the box model. All right, so you can see here. You can see here the 220 is only for the innermost content. The padding and the border is an extra. Now let's check out this. So it's occupying a total of 220. The innermost content is 200, padding 5 on each side, border 5 on each side, making it 220 totally for the width. Okay, so let's see another example where you might find this useful. Let's say we have a total of 4 divs, right? And both of them, the first line is basically the content box model and the second line is the border box model. So these are the CSS properties for the content box and this is the properties for the border box. So I put it as an inline block. So basically I was trying to create a layout like a grid, like a 50% layout where this one is to the left, occupies the left side of the screen and this occupies the right side of the screen. So I've given a different box sizing and it works perfectly fine, right? There's no problem with this. Now let's say we want to we find that we want to add some more padding to our elements, and if we add say 5 pixel of padding, it's going to break your layout. That's because it's going to occupy more than 50%. So since it's more than 50%, it goes to the next line. But whereas if you add some padding to the border box, it's going to remain the same. So this is one scenario where this could be useful. It makes our calculations easier. If we have to calculate for this one, it makes our calculations much harder. We need to subtract 5 pixels from the width. So that's an extra work to do there. So border box is actually pretty useful in some scenarios like this. So this is the official W3C spec document, which specifies the spec for the box sizing. As you can see, it has only two, the content box and the border box. I actually recommend you to go and just give this a read so that you understand it better. There are a few examples as well, so that we can solidify our knowledge on this topic.